Hello everyone, this is Highlander from MTG Cardsmith doing another custom Magic the Gathering card review. And today we're going to review a block of cards by TGBC. If you remember him, we reviewed his set called Earth. And this is another set. This is called Battle for Freedom. I don't know anything about the flavor of this set. I know that he sent me some messages, but they were more referring to the individual cards, and I actually didn't read them because I didn't want to sort of spoil my impressions of the card. So TGBC, the reason I didn't read them is because a card should be able to stand on its own and not need background explanation for it to make sense, right? So I didn't sort of want that to spoil my initial impression of the card. But I'll probably read them afterwards. Okay, so here's our first card. This is called Sabrina Lenny. So let me ask: is it Lennier or Lennier? Because I think you, if I'm not mistaken, this could be French. Lennier. I'm gonna say Lennier because I'm a filthy American, but let me know if it's Lennier. Anyway, well, hold on. Just let's just Lennier pronounce. Oops, I spelled it wrong. Pronounce. Okay, whatever. I was hoping Google would come up with something. All right. So let's see what we got here. We got a 1-mana 0/1 legendary creature human. Whenever a creature with power or toughness greater than Sabrina's enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter onto Sabrina. Okay, so she's got to evolve basically, right? Whenever a legendary creature or planeswalker you control dies, exile Sabrina, then return her to the battlefield transformed. Okay, so we have a flip card, and I have the other one. Okay, so here's the flip card. Shboop. Okay, let's open that. Okay, so we got a white card that turns into a white-blue. Wait. I'm a little confused here. So it says it flips into this, but why does she have a cost if she transforms? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, let me read the flavor text here too. Lennier told everyone to refer to Sabrina with the name Elahe to ensure his biological father didn't find out that she was resurrected. Oh, there's all sorts of stuff going on in this set, huh? Okay. Sabrina... Unshackled Time. Okay. Legendary Planeswalker. During your end step, if you control a Lennier, sorry, I keep wanting to say Lennier, maybe I'll just say Lennier, whatever. I'll just say it how I want, and let me know later. If you control a Lennier Planeswalker, put one loyalty onto Sabrina. Okay, so she gets a loyalty counter every turn if you have Lennier. +2, draw a card, gain 2 life. Okay. And -8, exile up to 3 target creatures, return them to the battlefield under their owner's control during your next upkeep. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look here. The flip cards are pretty complex. So we have a 1-mana 0/1 that whenever you play basically a creature with power toughness greater than hers, so she's got evolve essentially, right? I like that you didn't put evolve on here because that would really only make sense if you have evolve as like a mechanic in your set. So okay, she does that, and then she flips if a legendary creature or planeswalker dies. Okay, so that's kind of she's a little bit similar to like Liliana, Heretical Healer in that way. But it has to be a legendary creature or planeswalker, so that's fine. And other than that, she's sort of she's actually kind of a weak, like white weenie card. Like if sort of a comparison I think about is here is a Champion of the Perished. Did I say perished? Perished. So this one gets a +1/+1 counter whenever you play human. Obviously, you have to build around this one more, and this one just sort of works with any creatures. So, you know, I mean, they're still comparable. I think she doesn't do anything on her own, right? So you have to play another creature, but it's not like it's hard to do that. So the first counter is pretty easy. The second counter is pretty easy. So yeah, I mean, I find that fine. And then she flips into this. Okay, so if a legendary creature or planeswalker dies, can planeswalkers die? I don't think so. Okay. There's some grammatical and wording issues here that I'll get to. If she flips into this, which is okay. So it's 3 loyalty, and you can +2 her to draw a card and gain 2 life. That's very strong. That's very strong. And during your end step, you get, you know, so there's this, which I'm guessing only really matters if you're playing Commander, and I think most of your cards are Commander themed, if I'm not mistaken. So, oh, but this is a Planeswalker. Some Planeswalkers can be Commanders, right? So I don't know about, I don't know how good this is. It depends on how. I mean, like, I don't know. It seems pretty good. If you're building your deck around it, it seems pretty strong. Now, luckily, her -8 is pretty weak. Exile up to 3 target creatures. Return them to the battlefield under their owner's control during your next upkeep. So this is like, either you like get a couple things off the board so you can attack, or you essentially like, you know, exile your own creatures. And then they come back on the next upkeep. So it's, you know, like you can get their ETBs again, but like they can't block. So that's a little awkward. Okay, so this card, I mean, so here's some things that I find a little bit awkward about this card. For one, is you like have this like creature here that you want to like keep buffing in like a white weenie deck, right? So you're like, or let's just say a white aggressive deck. So you're like, you know, you're playing creatures, you're putting counters on them. She gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then all of a sudden, like, she gets flipped into a planeswalker, and now all those counters that you built up don't matter anymore. It would be kind of cool if, like, instead of like this ability here, if it said like, you know, when she transforms, if she had any +1/+1 counters on her, they turn into like loyalty counters or something, and then you would have some of these effects be like minus effects, something like that. Like that would, I think that would be kind of neat. But here it's like you're building up these counters, and then like if, at some point, because you don't have control over this, right? You can't choose not to transform her. You have to transform her. So it's like you build this creature up, and then all of a sudden she turns into like a completely different card, where all of a sudden she's like a control card. You draw a card and you gain 2 life. And her -8's like really weak. I mean, I don't like, in a way it's a good thing that her -8's really weak, because the fact that she flips into a, well, okay, so sorry, I keep sort of realizing things as I'm reading this. So there's a couple things to note here, right? So if they kill a legendary creature on their turn before they attack, this card's very vulnerable, because you have to flip it, and it's a 3 loyalty, which is good. And they could potentially just attack it and kill it, right? Of course, in that case, you could have blockers, but you know, it's just something to keep in mind. And then there's sort of the scenario where you want to do it on your own turn, and then in that case, you're sort of playing a different kind of deck. You're playing like some kind of a weird legendary sacrifice effect, in which case this card's actually very strong, because then all of a sudden you get a 5 loyalty planeswalker that +2s to draw a card and gain 2 life. For 1 mana, by the way, which is very good. I mean, I know Teferi does like, so okay, let's look at Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. So Teferi has a +1 draw card. and this untap 2 lands clause, right? So we can say that this is comparable. Yours is +2. And look, Teferi is not a fun card to play against, okay? Like, I mean, Teferi is kind of like on the, on the edge of like, should we make Planeswalkers this powerful? Like, he's, he was Teferi was very dominant when he was out, right? And his is only a +1 to draw a card. In your case, it's a +2 for a 1 mana, by the way. This one costs 5. So I worry that this card would be this card kind of has like a really high ceiling and a really low floor, which is and so it's like in one hand this card could do nothing, on the other hand it could do everything and be insane. Like, if you ever activate this ability twice, you're just like really, really ahead. Because then you have a 7 loyalty Planeswalker that's just going to draw you a card and gain you life every turn. And as long as you can protect her, which you're likely to because you're drawing cards every turn, you're just gonna like, eventually this thing, like, you're never using this -8. Let's be honest. Like, this -8 doesn't really do much. I mean, it gets 3 creatures. It like removes 3 blockers. But like using it to sort of blink your own creatures is pretty bad because then they can't block all of a sudden. So it's like you're taking like all of her loyalty down, and now you remove 3 of your own blockers, to get the blink effect. So it seems pretty bad. This one's a little bit all over the map for me. It's like, this card's fine. Like, I don't mind this, like, 1 mana 0/1 that grows every turn. I think that's a completely fine design. But then, like, having her flip into, like, a card that it does something, like, completely different. Because, like, okay, so this is very comparable to, like, a Gideon, Kytheon. Let's see if I can spell it right. Kytheon. Yeah. So, okay, so let's look at Kytheon, for example. This is sort of similar to what you're doing, right? So this is a cheap, like, white aggressive card. And if you attack with at least 2 or more creatures, it flips into Gideon Battleforge, okay? Now, here's the difference between Kytheon and Sabrina. So, first of all, Kytheon, the way he flips is under your control. You get to sort of choose when he flips, in the sense that it's something that you're triggering, not your opponent. Now, you could trigger this in like some kind of if you have some way to sacrifice. Okay, sure, that's fine. But then he flips into a Planeswalker that's still an aggressive white card, right? I mean, he can make creatures indestructible. He can become a 4/4 and attack in, right? I mean, he has some defensive utility, but you still want this card in a white aggressive deck, right? Here, I mean, yeah, this is in a white aggressive deck. This card is strange because like you build her up, and then at some point your opponent will kill a legendary creature or planeswalker, maybe, and then she'll like flip and they'll just be able to kill her. But like if you're playing like a sacrifice deck, then like these counters like aren't really gonna do much. And then all of a sudden she flips into like a really good card in that scenario, but it's like a completely different card than what's going on here. So I think I think you're understanding what I'm saying is like there's just there's just sort of a lot of the things aren't really combining into a nice goulash. It's like you're kind of just like throwing random ingredients into a pot and seeing how it tastes, and it's not going to taste good. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I feel about this card. Like I would rather this be like, she gets counters, and then, I know you probably have this on for story reasons, but like, let's maybe make this a Nay effect. And then here, when she flips, maybe her starting loyalty is equal to the number of counters she had. And then I would maybe change her ability to make it a more aggressive one, or to make it just feel a little bit more, you know, I don't know, to fit a little bit more with what the front side is trying to do. You know what I mean? Which is kill your opponent. And then, like, I think what would be cool is if she flips with loyalty equal to the number of counters, then you like sort of modify her abilities to where, like, you know, she's mostly minusing. Maybe you give her a plus of some kind, plus for draw a card, +2 especially. That's like very good for 1 mana. And also, okay, we can talk quickly about a couple formatting issues here. I mean, there's some wording issues. So let me just read this over. Whenever a creature with power or toughness greater than Sabrina's enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter onto Sabrina. Okay, I think that's fine. I think you can just say on Sabrina. Put a +1/+1 counter on Sabrina. Whenever a legendary creature or planeswalker you control dies, comma, exile Sabrina, period. Then, comma, return her to the battlefield transformed. And then she flips. And then during your end step, 2 words, if you control a Lennier planeswalker, put 1 loyalty counter, you forgot that, onto Sabrina. Yeah, so there's some grammatical issues here, and a couple wording issues. And because it's a flip card, this doesn't actually need to have a cost. Having a cost here doesn't actually make any sense. So that shouldn't be there. So yeah, I mean, you know, this sort of seems like something like you wrote a story here and you built a card around it, but it doesn't feel like you considered the playability aspect of this card. It feels like you only considered the story aspect, right? You're telling a little bit of a story here. So, and that's fine, but you know, when we look at Magic cards, we have to evaluate the entirety of the card, and the way this card plays is just quite, you know, pretty awkward. So, I would maybe just think about that when you're, you know, think about how cards play out when you're designing these, in addition to the story you're trying to tell. So yeah, I'm gonna give this one a 2 out of 5. I just I find this card to not really come together. So yeah, that's my review of Sabrina Lennier's sister. Thank you for watching.